Funeral by Matthew Arnold. The gods held talk together, groupĺd in knots, round Balderl's corpse, which they had thither borne, and Hermod came down towards them from the gate. And Loke, the father of the Serpent, first beheld him come, and to his neighbour spake, ƴSee, here is Hermod, who comes single back from hell, and shall I tell thee how he seems like as a farmer, who hath lost his dog, some morn, at market. In a crowded town through many streets the poor beast runs in vain, and follows this man after that, for hours, and, late at evening, spent and panting, falls before a strangerĺs threshold, not his home, with flanks a-tremble, and his slender tongue hangs quivering out between his dust-smearĺd jaws, and piteously he eyes the passers-by. But home his master comes to his own farm, far in the country, wondering where he is. So Hermod comes to day unfollowed home. And straight his neighbour, marvelled with wrath, replied, deceiver, fair in form, but false in heart, enemy, mocker, whom, though gods, we hate peace, lest our father Odin hear thee gibe. Would I might see him snatch thee in his hand, and bind thy carcass, like a bale, with cords, and hurl thee in a lake, to sink or swim. If clear from plotting Balderl's death, to swim, but deep, if thou devisedst it, to drown, and perish, against fate, before thy day. So they two soft to one another spake. But Odin looked toward the land, and saw his messenger, and he stood forth, and cried, and Hermod came, and leapt from Sleipnir down, and in his father's hand put Sleipnir's rein, and greeted Odin and the gods, and said, Lodin, my father, and ye, gods of heaven. Lo, home, having performed your will, I come. Into the joyless kingdom have I been, below, and looked upon the shadowy tribes of ghosts, and communed with their solemn queen. And to your prayer she sends you this reply. Show her through all the world the signs of grief. Fails but one thing to grieve, there Balder stops. Let gods, men, brutes, beweep hint, plants and stones. So shall she know your loss was dear indeed, and bend her heart, and give you Balder back. He spoke, and all the gods to Odin looked, and straight the father of the ages said, Lie gods, these terms may keep another day. But now, put on your arms, and mount your steeds, and in procession all come near, and weep Balder. For that is what the dead desire. When ye enough have wept, then build a pile of the heaped wood, and burn his corpse with fire out of our sight, that we may turn from grief, and lead, as erst, our daily life in heaven. He spoke, and the gods armored, and Odin donned his dazzling corslet and his helm of gold, and led the way on Sleipnir, and the rest followed, in tears, their father and their king. And thrice in arms around the dead they rode, weeping. The sands were wetted, and their arms, with their thick falling tears. So good a friend they mourned that day, so bright, so loved a god. And Odin came, and laid his kingly hands on Balderl's breast, and thus began the wail. Farewell, O Balder, bright and loved, my son. In that great day, the twilight of the gods, when Muspel's children shall beleaguer heaven, then we shall miss thy counsel and thy arm. Thou camest near the next, O warrior Thor. Shouldering thy hammer, in thy chariot drawn, swaying the long-herald goats with silverled rein, and over Balderl's corpse these words didst say, brother, thou dwellest in the darksome land, and talkest with the feeble tribes of ghosts, now, and I know not how they prize thee there, but here, I know, thou wilt be missled and mourned. For haughty spirits and high wraths are rife among the gods and heroes here in heaven, as among those, whose joy and work is war. And daily strifes arise, and angry words. But from thy lips, O Balder, night or day, heard no one ever an injurious word to god or hero, but thou keptest back the others, laboring to compose their brawls. Be ye then kind, as Balder too was kind, for we lose him, who smoothed all strife in heaven. He spake, and all the gods assenting wailed. And Freya next came nigh, with golden tears, the loveliest goddess she in heaven, by all most Arnold after Freya, Odinel's wife. Her long ago the wandering Oder took to mate, but left her to roam distant lands. Since then she seeks him, and weeps tears of gold. Names hath she many. Vanadis on earth they call her. Freya is her name in heaven. She in her hands took Balderl's head, and spake, "La Balder, my brother, thou art gone a road unknown and long, and haply on that way my long-lost wandering Oder thou hast met, for in the paths of heaven he is not found. Oh, if it be so, tell him what thou wert to his neglected wife, and what he is, and wring his heart with shame, to hear thy word. For he, my husband, left me here to pine, not long a wife, when his unquiet heart first drove him from me into distant lands. Since then I vainly seek him through the world, and weep from shore to shore my golden tears, but neither God nor mortal heeds my pain. Thou only, Balder, wert for ever kind, to take my hand, and wipe my tears, and say, Weep not, O Freya, weep no golden tears. One day the wandering Oder will return, or thou wilt find him in thy faithful search on some great road, or resting in an inn, or at a ford, or sleeping by a tree." So Balder said. But Oder, well I know, my truant Oder I shall see no more to the world's end. And Balder now is gone, and I am left uncomforted in heaven. else spake, and all the goddesses bewailed. Last, from among the heroes one came near, no god, but of the hero troop. The chief Regner, who swept the northern sea with fleets, and ruled o'er Denmark and the heathy isles, living. But Ella captured him and slew. A king, whose fame then filled the vast of heaven, now time obscures it, and Menel's later deeds. He last approached the corpse, and spake, and said, La Balder, there yet are many skalds in heaven still left. And that chief skald, thy brother Brage, whom we may bid to sing, though thou art gone, and all these gladly, while we drink, we hear, after the feast is done, in Odinel's hall. But they harp ever on one string, and wake remembrance in our soul of wars alone, such as on earth we valiantly have waggled, and blood, and ringing blows, and violent death. But when thou sangest, Balder, thou didst strike another note, and, like a bird in spring, thy voice of joyance minded us, and youth, and wife, and children, and our ancient home. Yes, and I too remembered then no more my dungeon, where the serpents stung me dead, nor Elul's victory on the English coast. But I heard Thora laugh in Gothland Isle, and saw my shepherdess, Aslaga, tend her flock along the white Norwegian beach. Tears started to mine eyes with yearning joy, therefore with grateful heart I mourn thee dead. So Regner spake, and all the heroes groaned. But now the sun had passed the height of heaven, and soon had all that day been spent in wail. But then the father of the ages said, Lie gods, there well may be too much of wail. Bring now the gathered wood to Balderl's ship. Heap on the deck the logs, and build the pyre. But when the gods and heroes heard, they brought the wood to Balderl's ship, and built a pile, full the deck's breadth, and lofty. Then the corpse of Balder on the highest top they laid, with Nanna on his right, and on his left Hoder, his brother, whom his own hand slew. And they set jars of wine and oil to lean against the bodies, and stuck torches near, splinters of pine wood, soaked with turpentine, and brought his arms and gold, and all his stuff, and slew the dogs which at his table fed, and his horse, Balderl's horse, whom most he loved, and threw them on the pyre, and Odin threw a last choice gift thereon, his golden ring. They fixed the mast, and hoisted up the sails, then they put fire to the wood, and Thor set his stout shoulder hard against the stern to push the ship through the thick sand. Sparks flew from the deep trench she ploughed, so strong a god furled it, and the water gurgled in, and the ship floated on the waves, and rockled. But in the hills a strong east wind arose, and came down moaning to the sea. First squalls ran black o'er the seal's face, then steady rushed the breeze, and filled the sails, and blew the fire. And, wreathed in smoke, the ship stood out to sea. Soon with a roaring rose the mighty fire, and the pile crackled, and between the logs sharp quivering tongues of flame shot out, and leapt, curling and darting, higher, until they lickled the summit of the pile, the dead, the mast, and ate the shriveling sails. But still the ship drove on, ablaze, above her hull, with fire. And the gods stood upon the beach, and gazzled, and, while they gazzled, the sun went lurid down into the smoke-wrapped sea, and night came on. Then the wind fell, with night, and there was calm. But through the dark they watcholode the burning ship still carried o'er the distant waters on farther and farther, like an eye of fire. And as in the dark night a travelling man who bivouacs in a forest amid the hills, sees suddenly a spire of flame shoot up out of the black waste forest, far below, which woodcutters have lighted near their lodge against the wolves. And all night long it flares. So flarled, in the far darkness, Balderĺs pyre. But fainter, as the stars rose high, it burned. The bodies were consumed, ash chokeled the pile, and as in a decaying winter fire a charred log, falling, makes a shower of sparks, so, with a shower of sparks, the pile fell in, reddening the sea around. And all was dark. But the gods went by starlight up the shore to Asgard, and sat down in Odinel's hall at table, and the funeral feast began. All night they ate the boar Serpent's flesh, and from their horns, with silver rimelt, drank mead, silent, and waited for the sacred morn. And mourning over all the world was spread. Then from their loathered feast the gods arose, and took their horses, and set forth to ride o'er the bridge Bifrost, whereas Heimdall's watch, to the ash Yggdrasil, and Idle's plain. Thor came on foot, the rest on horseback rode. And they found Mimir sitting by his fount of wisdom, which beneath the ash tree springs, and saw the Nornies watering the roots of that world-shadowing tree with honeydew. There came the gods, and sat them down on stones, and thus the Father of the ages said, Lie gods, the terms ye know, which Hermod brought. Accept them or reject them, both have grounds. Accept them, and they bind us, unfulfilled, to leave forever Balder in the grave, an unrecoverable prisoner, shade with shades. But how, ÉSee, should the fulfillment fail? Smooth sound the terms, and light to be fulfilled. For dear beloved was Balder while he lived in heaven and earth, and who would grudge him tears? But from the traitorous seed of Loke they come, these terms, and I suspect some hidden fraud. Bethink ye, gods, is there no other way? Speak, were not this a way, the way for gods? If Odin, clad in radiant arms, mounted on Sleipnir, with the warrior Thor drawn in his car beside me, and my sons, all the strong brood of heaven, to swell my train, should make eruption into Helel's realm, and set the fields of gloom ablaze with light, and bring in triumph Balder back to heaven. He spake, and his fierce sons applauded loud. But Freya, mother of the gods, arose, daughter and wife of Odin. Thus she said, Lodin, thou whirlwind, what a threat is this? Thou threat a nest what transcends thy might, even thine. For of all powers the mightiest far art. Thou, Lord over men on earth, and gods in heaven. Yet even from thee thyself hath been withheld one thing, to undo what thou thyself hast ruled. For all which hath been fixed, was fixed by thee. In the beginning, ere the gods were born, before the heavens were builded, thou didst slay the giant Ymir, whom the abyss brought forth, thou and thy brethren. Fierce, the sons of Bor, and through his trunk to choke the abysmal void. But of his flesh and members thou didst build the earth and ocean, and above them heaven. And from the flaming world, where Muspel reigns, thou sentest and fetchedest fire, and maddest lights, sun, moon and stars, which thou hast hung in heaven, dividing clear the paths of night and day. And Asgard thou didst build, and Midgard fort. Then me thou maddelst. Of us the gods were born. Then, walking by the sea, thou foundest spars of wood, and framedst men, who till the earth, or on the sea, the field of pirates, sail, and all the race of Ymir thou didst drown, save one, Bergelmir, he on shipboard fled thy deluge, and from him the giants sprang. But all that brood thou hast removed far off, and set by Oceanell's utmost marge to dwell. But Hela into Niflheim thou threwest, and gavelst her 9 unlighted worlds to rule, a queen, an empire over all the dead. That empire wilt thou now invade, light up her darkness, from her grasp a subject tear. Try it, but I, for one, will not applaud, nor do I merit. Odin, thou shouldst slight me in my words, though thou be first in heaven, for I too am a goddess, born of thee, thine eldest, and of me the gods are sprung, and all that is to come I know, but lock in my own breast, and have to none revealed. Come then, since Hela holds by right her prey, but offers terms for his release. To heaven, accept the chance, thou canst no more obtain. Send through the world thy messengers, entreat all living and unliving things to weep for Balder. If thou haply thus milst melt Hela, and win the loved one back to heaven. else spake, and on her face let fall her veil, and bowed her head, and sat with folded hands. Nor did the all-ruling Odin slight her word. Straightway he spake, and thus addressed the gods. Go quickly forth through all the world, and pray all living and unliving things to weep Balder, if haply he may thus be won. When the gods heard, they straight arose, and took their horses, and rode forth through all the world. North, south, east, west they struck, and roamed the world, entreating all things to weep Balderĺs death, and all that lived, and all without life, wept. And as in winter, when the frost breaks up, at winter's end, before the spring begins, and a warm west wind blows, and thaw sets in after an hour, a dripping sound is heard in all the forests, and the soft strewn snow under the trees is dibbled thick with holes, and from the boughs the snowloads shuffle down, and in fields sloping to the south dark plots of grass peep out amid surrounding snow, and widen, and the peasant's heart is glad. So through the world was heard a dripping noise of all things weeping to bring Balder back, and there fell joy upon the gods to hear. But Hermod rode with neighbour, whom he took to show him spits and beaches of the sea far off, where some unwarned might fail to weep. Neighbour, the god of storms, whom fishers know not, born in heaven. He was in Vanheim reared with men, but lives a hostage with the gods. He knows each frith, and every rocky creek fringled with dark pines, and sands where seafowl scream. They too scourled every coast, and all things wept. And they rode home together, through the wood of Jarnvid, which to east of Midgard lies bordering the giants, where the trees are iron. There in the wood before a cave they came, where sat, in the cavel's mouth, a skinny hag, toothless and old. She gibs the passers-by. Thok is she called. But now Loke wore her shape. She greeted them the first, and lolled, and said, Lie gods, good lack, is it so dull in heaven, that ye come pleasuring to Thokkel's ironwood? Lovers of change ye are, fastidious sprites. Look, as in some Borel's yard a sweet-breathed cow whose manger is stuffed full of good fresh hay snuffs at it daintily, and stoops her head to chew the straw, her litter, at her feet, so ye grow squeamish, gods, and sniff at heaven. She spake. But Hermod answered her and said, Thok, not for gibs we come for tears. Balder is dead, and Hela holds her prey, but will restore, if all things give him tears. Begrudge not thine. To all was Balder dear. But, with a louder laugh, the hag replied, Lie Balder dead? And do ye come for tears? Thok with dry eyes will weep o'er Balderĺs pyre. Weep him all other things, if weep they will I weep him not. Let Hela keep her prey. She spake. And to the cavernell's depth she fled, mocking, and Hermod knew their toil was vain. And as seafaring men, who long have wrought in the great deep for gain, at last come home, and towards evening see the headlands rise of their own country, and can clear descry a fire of withered firs which boys have lit upon the cliffs, or smoke of burning weeds out of a tilled field inland. Then the wind catches them, and drives out again to sea, and they go long days tossing up and down over the grey sea ridges, and the glimpse of port they had makes bitterer far their toil, so the gods'll cross was bitterer for their joy. Then, sad at heart, to neighbour Hermod spake, "Lit is the accuser Loke, who flouts us all. Ride back, and tell in heaven this heavy news. I must again below, to Hel's realm." He spoke, and neighbour set forth back to heaven. But, northward Hermod rode, the way below, though way he knew, and traversed Jarl's stream, and down to ocean groupĺd, and crossed the ice, and came beneath the wall, and found the grate still lifted. Well was his return foreknown. And once more Hermod saw around him spread the joyless plains, and heard the streams of hell. But as he entered, on the extremest hound of Niflheim, he saw one ghost come near, hovering, and stopping oft, as if afraid. Hoder, the unhappy, whom his own hand slew, and Hermod looked, and knew his brother's ghost, and called him by his name, and sternly said, "Loder, ill-fated, blind in heart and eyes, why tarriest thou to plunge thee in the gulf of the deep inner gloom, but flittest here, in twilight, on the lonely verge of hell, far from the other ghosts, and Hel's throne? Doubtless thou fearest to meet Balderĺs voice, thy brother, whom through folly thou didst slay." He spoke, but Hoder answered him, and said, "Hermod the nimble, dost thou still pursue the unhappy with reproach, even in the grave? For this I died, and fled beneath the gloom, not daily to endure abhorring gods, nor with a hateful presence cumber heaven, and canst thou not, even here, pass pitying by? No less than Balder have I lost the light of heaven, and communion with my kin. I too had once a wife, and once a child, and substance, and a golden house in heaven, but all I left of my own act, and fled below. And dost thou hate me even here? Balder upbraids me not, nor hates at all, though he has cause, have any cause. But he, when that with downcast looks I hither came, stretched forth his hand, and, with benignant voice, "Welcome," he said, "if there be welcome here, brother and fellow sport of Loke with me. And not to offend thee, Hermod, nor to force my hated converse on thee, came I up from the deep gloom, where I will now return. But earnestly I longed to hover near, not too far off, when that thou camest by, to feel the presence of a brother god, and hear the passage of a horse of heaven, for the last time. For here thou comest no more." He spake, and turned to go to the inner gloom. But Hermod staled him with mild words, and said, "Thou doest well to chide me, Hoder blind. Truly thou sighest, the planning guilty mind was Lokel's, the unwitting hand alone was thine. But gods are like the sons of men in this: when they have woe, they blame the nearest cause. Howbeit stay, and be appeased, until sits Balder still in pomp by Hel's side, or is he mingled with the unnumbered dead?" And the blind Hoder answered him and spake, "Lee's place of state remains by Hel's side, but empty, for his wife, for Nanna, came lately below, and joined him, and the pair frequent the still recesses of the realm of Hela, and hold converse undisturbed. But they too doubtless will have breathed the balm which floats before a visitant from heaven, and have drawn upwards to this verge of hell." He spake, and, as he ceased, a puff of wind rolled heavily the leaden mist aside round where they stood, and they beheld two forms make towards them o'er the stretching cloudy plain. And Hermod straight perceived them, who they were, Balder and Nanna, and to Balder said, "La Balder, too truly thou foresaw'st a snare. Loke triumphs still, and Hela keeps her prey. No more to Asgard shalt thou come, nor lodge in thy own house, Breidablik, nor enjoy the love all bear towards thee, nor train up Forset, thy son, to be beloved like thee. Here must thou lie, and wait an endless age. Therefore, for the last time, O Balder, hail." He spake, and Balder answered him and said, "Lyle and farewell, for here thou comest no more. Yet mourn not for me, Hermod, when thou sittest in heaven, nor let the other gods lament, as wholly to be pitied, quite forlorn. for Nanna hath rejoined me, who, of old, in heaven, was seldom parted from my side, and still the acceptance follows me, which crowned my former life, and cheers me even here. The iron frown of Hela is relaxed when I draw nigh, and the wan tribes of dead trust me, and gladly bring for my award their ineffectual feuds and feeble hates, shadows of hates, but they distress them still. And the fleet-footed Hermod made reply, Thou hast then all the solace death allows, esteem and function, and so far as well. Yet here thou liest, Balder, underground, rusting forever, and the years roll on, the generations pass, the ages grow, and bring us nearer to the final day when from the south shall march the fiery band and cross the bridge of heaven, with Loke for guide, and Fenris at his heel with broken chain, while from the east the giant Rhymer steers his ship, and the great Serpent makes to land, and all are marshalled in one flaming square against the gods, upon the plains of heaven. I mourn thee, that thou canst not help us then. He spake, but Balder answered him and said, Mourn not for me, mourn, Hermod, for the gods. Mourn for the men on earth, the gods in heaven, who live, and with their eyes shall see that day. The day will come, when Asgard's towers shall fall, and Odin, and his sons, the seed of heaven. But what were I, to save them in that hour? If strength could save them, could not Odin save my father, and his pride, the warrior Thor, Vidar the silent, the impetuous Tyr? What were I, when these cannot avail? Yet, doubtless, when the day of battle comes, and the two hosts are marshalled, and in heaven the golden-crested cock shall sound alarm, and his black brother bird from hence reply, and bucklers clash, and spears begin to pour, longing will stir within my breast, though vain. But, not to me so grievous, as, I know, to other gods it were, is my enforced absence from fields where I could nothing aid. For I am long since weary of your storm of carnage, and find, Hermod, in your life something too much of war and broils, which make life one perpetual fight, a bath of blood. Mine eyes are dizzy with the arrowy hail, mine ears are stunned with blows, and sick for calm. Inactive therefore let me lie, in gloom, unarmed, inglorious. I attend the course of ages, and my late return to light, in times less alien to a spirit mild, in new recovered seats, the happier day. He spake, and the fleet Hermod thus replied, brother, what seats are these, what happier day? Tell me, that I may ponder it when gone. And the ray-crowned Balder answered him, far to the south, beyond the blue, there spreads another heaven, the boundless. No one yet hath reached it. There hereafter shall arise the second Asgard, with another name. Thither, when o'er this present earth and heavens the tempest of the latter days hath swept, and they from sight have disappeared, and sunk, shall a small remnant of the gods repair. Hoder and I shall join them from the grave. There reassembling we shall see emerge from the bright ocean at our feet an earth more fresh, more verdant than the last, with fruits self-springing, and a seed of man preserved, who then shall live in peace, as now in war. But we in heaven shall find again with joy the ruined palaces of Odin, seats familiar, halls where we have suppled of old. Re-enter them with wonder, never fill our eyes with gazing, and rebuild with tears. And we shall tread once more the well-known plain of Ida, and among the grass shall find the golden dice with which we played of yore, and that will bring to mind the former life and pastime of the gods, the wise discourse of Odin, the delights of other days. O Hermod, pray that thou mayest join us then. Such for the future is my hope. Meanwhile, I rest the thrall of Hela, and endure death, and the gloom which round me even now thickens, and to its inner gulf recalls. Farewell, for longer, speech is not allowed. He spoke, and waved farewell, and gave his hand to Nanna, and she gave their brother blind her hand, in turn, for guidance, and the three departed o'er the cloudy plain, and soon faded from sight into the interior gloom. But Hermod stood beside his drooping horse, mute, gazing after them in tears. and fain had he followed their receding steps, though they to death were bound, and he to heaven, then, but a power he could not break withheld. And as a stork which idle boys have trappled, and tied him in a yard, at autumn sees flocks of his kind pass flying o'er his head to warmer lands, and coasts that keep the sun, he strains to join their flight, and, from his shed, follows them with a long complaining cry. So Hermod gazelled, and yearned to join his kin. At last he sailed, and set forth back to heaven.